The storm rolled over Blackwood Ranch like a warning from God himself, lightning tearing across the Texas sky while Elijah Kane sat alone in the darkened dining hall of his massive estate, untouched whiskey burning in his hand as silence swallowed the house whole. The richest rancher in 3 counties had everything money could buy, thousands of acres, prized horses, oil rights beneath his land, and enough power to make grown men tremble, but not one person who truly loved him. People feared Elijah Kane. Women chased his fortune. Rivals envied his empire. But nobody knew the truth hidden beneath the cold eyes and rough cowboy exterior. 5 years earlier, Elijah had buried the only woman he had ever trusted, and since that day his heart had become a locked cage no one could enter. Yet on the night the rain came crashing down over Texas, fate was already driving a terrified young woman toward his land, bruised, hunted, and praying for a miracle she no longer believed existed. Before we begin, subscribe now and join thousands of viewers who love emotional cowboy romances filled with shocking twists, forbidden love, betrayal, revenge, and endings that stay in your heart forever. Because tonight's story may be the most unforgettable one yet. Her name was Naomi Carter, and at 26 years old she had forgotten what freedom felt like. For nearly 2 years she had been trapped inside a trafficking ring operating behind the cover of a roadside nightclub outside Dallas. To customers, the place looked like another dirty southern bar full of whiskey and country music. But behind locked doors, girls disappeared into private rooms and came out looking emptier each time. Naomi had once dreamed of becoming a nurse. She had once laughed easily, danced in church with her little sister, and believed hard work could build a future. But one bad relationship had destroyed everything. Her ex-boyfriend Marcus had sold her debts, her trust, and eventually her freedom to dangerous men who treated women like property. Every escape attempt ended with bruises. Every scream was ignored. Eventually Naomi stopped believing anyone would come for her. Until the night she overheard 2 guards talking about moving her permanently across the border by sunrise. She realized if she didn't run now, she would disappear forever. The rain had become violent when Naomi slipped through a broken side gate while the guards argued inside. Barefoot, soaked, bleeding from a cut on her arm, she ran into the darkness without knowing where she was going. Headlights passed on distant highways while thunder shook the earth beneath her feet. For hours she stumbled through muddy back roads until exhaustion nearly destroyed her. Then, through the storm, she saw it. Massive iron gates with the initials EK carved into black steel. Blackwood Ranch. She collapsed beside the entrance just as a truck approached through the rain. Elijah Kane noticed her immediately. At first he thought she was dead. The woman lying near his gate looked fragile beneath the storm, her clothes torn, skin bruised, curls soaked against her face. Most men in his position would have called the police and driven away. Elijah stepped out into the rain instead. When Naomi felt strong arms lifting her from the mud, panic exploded inside her. She fought wildly, screaming and clawing until Elijah growled over the thunder, "Easy. Nobody's hurting you." His voice was rough but steady. Different. Not greedy. Not cruel. Different enough that Naomi finally stopped struggling. Half conscious, she whispered the words that shattered something inside Elijah Kane forever. "Please don't send me back." Elijah carried her into the ranch house while the storm raged outside. His longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez, nearly dropped a tray when she saw the condition Naomi was in. Bruises covered her body. Fear lived in her eyes. Elijah immediately called the town doctor, though Naomi panicked at the thought of police involvement. "No cops," she begged weakly. "Please." Elijah studied her for a long moment before nodding once. "No cops tonight." The doctor treated Naomi's injuries privately and quietly. Broken ribs that had partially healed wrong. Deep bruising. Signs of prolonged abuse nobody needed explained aloud. Afterward, while Naomi slept upstairs, the doctor pulled Elijah aside. "Whoever did this to her is dangerous." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Then they better pray I don't find them first." For the next few days Naomi barely spoke. Every sudden sound made her flinch. Every man terrified her except Elijah, though she couldn't understand why. Maybe it was because he never pushed her. Never questioned her aggressively. Never touched her without warning. He simply gave her space, meals, warm blankets, and silence when she needed it. Yet Elijah found himself watching her constantly. There was something about the sadness in her eyes that reminded him of himself. Broken people recognized each other. One evening Naomi wandered outside and discovered Elijah repairing a fence beneath the setting sun. The Texas sky burned orange across endless land while horses moved peacefully nearby. "You own all this?" she asked softly. Elijah nodded. "Unfortunately." Naomi almost smiled for the first time. "Most rich men would brag about it." Elijah leaned against the fence. "Most rich men are idiots." A small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Elijah stared at her in surprise because the sound felt like hearing music after years of silence. Over the following weeks Naomi slowly healed. Mrs. Alvarez helped her regain strength while Elijah quietly arranged extra security around the ranch without explaining why. He suspected whoever hunted Naomi would eventually come looking. Meanwhile, feelings neither of them expected began growing in dangerous silence. Naomi noticed the loneliness Elijah hid behind sarcasm and whiskey. Elijah noticed the strength Naomi carried despite everything she had survived. Late at night they began sitting together on the porch, sharing pieces of themselves beneath starlit skies. Naomi learned Elijah had built his empire after growing up dirt poor with an abusive father. Elijah learned Naomi still dreamed about becoming a nurse despite believing her future was ruined. "You still can," Elijah told her one night. Naomi shook her head sadly. "People like me don't get second chances." Elijah looked directly into her eyes. "Everybody gets one. Some of us just have to fight harder for it." For the first time in years, Naomi felt seen instead of used. But peace never lasts long for broken people. One afternoon Elijah returned from town to discover Naomi missing. Panic hit him harder than he expected. Security cameras soon revealed the truth. Two armed men had breached the outer property while Naomi walked near the horse stables. They had dragged her into a black SUV before speeding away. Elijah watched the footage once. Then his entire demeanor changed. Cold fury settled over him like death itself. "Find them," he ordered his security chief. "I don't care what it costs." Hours later Elijah learned the kidnapping connected directly to Victor Salazar, the trafficker controlling the Dallas operation Naomi escaped from. Victor wasn't just a criminal. He was wealthy, protected, and deeply connected to corrupt officials across Texas. Most men feared him. Elijah Kane didn't. By midnight Elijah had armed himself and driven toward Dallas with 3 loyal ranch hands beside him. Meanwhile Naomi sat tied to a chair inside Victor's nightclub office while music thundered. Downstairs, Victor smirked as he circled her. "You caused me expensive problems, sweetheart." Naomi trembled but refused to cry. "Go to hell." Victor backhanded her hard enough to split her lip. "You should have stayed on the ranch. Now your cowboy dies too." But Victor underestimated one thing. Elijah Kane had already become willing to burn the world for her. The nightclub exploded into chaos shortly after 2 a.m. when Elijah and his men stormed inside. Fists crashed. Gunshots echoed. Terrified customers fled screaming. Elijah moved through the violence like a man possessed until he finally kicked open Victor's office door. Naomi's eyes widened in disbelief. Elijah stood there bleeding from a cut above his brow, fury blazing in his eyes. Victor reached for a weapon, but Elijah slammed him against the desk with terrifying force. "Touch her again," Elijah hissed coldly, "and I'll bury you where nobody finds the body." Victor laughed despite blood running down his mouth. "You think you can protect her forever?" Elijah's expression turned deadly calm. "Try me." He untied Naomi gently before wrapping his jacket around her shaking shoulders. Then, right there amid broken glass and violence, Elijah touched her face softly and whispered the words that changed everything between them forever. "Can I hold you?" Naomi broke instantly. Tears poured down her cheeks as she collapsed against him, trembling violently while Elijah held her like she might shatter. Nobody had asked permission to touch her in years. Nobody had cared whether she felt safe. But this powerful cowboy with blood on his knuckles held her like she mattered more than revenge itself. And in that moment Naomi realized she was falling in love with the one man she could never afford to lose. Back at Blackwood Ranch their connection deepened rapidly. Elijah became fiercely protective, while Naomi slowly allowed herself to believe happiness might still exist for someone like her. Yet Elijah carried secrets he hadn't revealed. One night Naomi discovered an old photograph hidden inside his office drawer, Elijah smiling beside a beautiful blonde woman. On the back was written, "Forever yours, Clara." Naomi confronted him carefully. Elijah's face darkened immediately. "She was my wife." Naomi froze. Elijah stared out the window before continuing quietly. She died in a car accident 5 years ago. But something about his tone felt unfinished. Later Mrs. Alvarez finally revealed the truth Naomi wasn't supposed to know. Clara Kane had not died accidentally. She had been murdered after Elijah testified against corrupt businessmen laundering money through cattle contracts. The case disappeared due to political pressure, and nobody was ever convicted. Since then Elijah trusted no one completely. Naomi suddenly understood the pain hiding behind his eyes. She also realized loving Elijah could be deadly. Weeks later Elijah took Naomi horseback riding through the far edges of the property at sunset. The wind moved through open fields while silence stretched comfortably between them. Eventually Elijah stopped near a hill overlooking the ranch. This place used to feel empty, he admitted quietly. Naomi looked at him carefully. And now, Elijah stepped closer. Now it feels like home again. The air between them changed instantly. Naomi's heartbeat pounded as Elijah brushed rain-soft curls from her face. He moved slowly enough for her to stop him if she wanted. She didn't. Their first kiss was gentle, trembling, desperate, and healing all at once. Naomi felt years of fear cracking apart inside her while Elijah held her carefully like she was something sacred. But happiness invited danger. Unknown to them, Victor Salazar had survived the nightclub attack and now wanted revenge. Worse, he had formed an alliance with someone much closer to Elijah than either realized, Elijah's own business partner, Raymond Cole. Raymond secretly blamed Elijah for losing millions after federal investigations years earlier. Helping Victor destroy Elijah became profitable revenge. Together they planned to seize Blackwood Ranch permanently. The betrayal surfaced during the annual Kane Foundation charity gala attended by wealthy politicians, ranchers, and media figures. Naomi wore an elegant dark green gown Mrs. Alvarez helped choose, stunning everyone in the ballroom. For the first time in years Naomi felt beautiful instead of broken. Yet whispers followed her everywhere because high society loved gossip. Some guests recognized her from the nightclub world tied to Victor's operations. Cruel comments spread quickly. That's the woman Elijah Kane rescued. She was one of those girls. Imagine bringing someone like that here. Naomi overheard enough to destroy her confidence instantly. She fled onto a balcony fighting tears before Elijah found her. I don't belong here, she whispered painfully. Elijah stepped closer. You belong wherever you decide to stand. Naomi shook her head. They'll always see me as damaged. Elijah lifted her chin gently. Then let them choke on it while you prove them wrong. Before Naomi could respond, gunshots shattered the gala. Chaos erupted instantly as masked men stormed the estate. Guests screamed and ducked for cover while Elijah grabbed Naomi protectively. Victor's voice thundered through speakers. Tonight Elijah Kane loses everything. Armed attackers spread across the ranch while security fought back. Elijah rushed Naomi toward a hidden safe room beneath the mansion, but halfway there Raymond Cole appeared holding a gun. Elijah stared in disbelief. Raymond smirked bitterly. You should have died with your wife. Naomi realized too late that Raymond had orchestrated Clara's murder years earlier alongside Victor's criminal network. Elijah lunged forward just as Raymond fired. The bullet struck Naomi instead. Time stopped. Elijah caught her before she hit the floor, horror flooding his face as blood spread across her dress. No, he whispered shakily. No, 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 Naomi struggled to breathe while Elijah pressed trembling hands against the wound. Security forces finally overwhelmed Victor's men upstairs, but Elijah barely heard the fighting anymore. Everything narrowed to Naomi fading in his arms. Tears filled his eyes as he held her close. Stay with me, he begged. Please. Naomi touched his face weakly. You saved me, she whispered. Elijah shook his head desperately. You saved me first. Paramedics arrived moments later while Raymond attempted escape, only to be killed during a shootout with ranch security. Victor vanished before police secured the property. At the hospital Elijah refused to leave Naomi's side during emergency surgery. For 16 endless hours he sat alone replaying every moment since finding her beside his gates in the rain. He realized something terrifying there beneath harsh hospital lights. He loved her more deeply than he had ever loved anyone. When the surgeon finally emerged, Elijah stood instantly. She's alive, the doctor said. Relief nearly dropped Elijah to his knees. Naomi's recovery lasted weeks. Elijah remained beside her through every nightmare, every painful movement, every fear. One evening after she finally returned to the ranch, Naomi found Elijah sitting quietly on the porch watching the stars. She walked slowly toward him, still healing. Elijah immediately stood to help her sit beside him. For a while neither spoke. Then Naomi whispered, "Why did you risk everything for me?" Elijah looked at her with complete honesty. "Because losing you would destroy me." Tears filled Naomi's eyes again. Elijah reached for her hand carefully. "All my life I thought love only brought pain," he admitted. "Then you showed up at my gate." Naomi leaned against him softly while warm Texas wind moved across the dark fields. "I was so afraid nobody would ever see me as more than what happened to me." Elijah kissed her forehead gently. "You were never what happened to you." Months later, Victor Salazar was finally arrested after federal investigators uncovered his trafficking network through evidence Naomi bravely provided. Her testimony helped rescue dozens of missing women across several states. News channels called her courageous. Survivors called her hope. But Naomi cared most about the quiet life slowly growing at Blackwood Ranch. She eventually enrolled in nursing school while Elijah funded rehabilitation programs for trafficking survivors across Texas in secret without seeking credit. 1 year later, Elijah brought Naomi back to the hill overlooking the ranch where they first kissed. Sunset painted the land gold while horses moved peacefully below. Elijah seemed unusually nervous, which made Naomi smile. "The mighty Elijah Kane is scared," she teased softly. Elijah pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Terrified. Naomi's breath caught instantly. Elijah looked directly into her eyes, emotion breaking through his usual rough exterior. "The night I found you, I thought I was saving a stranger," he said quietly. "But you became the reason I learned how to live again." He opened the box revealing a stunning diamond ring once belonging to his mother. "Naomi Carter, can I hold you for the rest of my life?" Naomi burst into tears before laughing through them. "Yes." Elijah slid the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms as the sun disappeared beyond the Texas horizon. And for the first time in many years, Elijah Kane finally understood something money could never buy. Sometimes the most broken souls love the hardest, and the right person doesn't rescue your heart by force. They ask permission first.